Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. Now we're going to actually explore what it means for us to approach our tuning of our drums. I know we've kind of talked about this idea of the drums are going to sound different as well acoustically than how they'll sound from a microphone. So maybe starting with what some of your approaches that you'll take to tuning the drums.
Yeah, I guess across the board, one thing that I could say practically is the resonant head on pretty much all the drums is going to be tighter than the batter head. So when I'm approaching, tuning to most of the drums on the kit, it's going to be a tight resonant head. That's going to be where I start. I feel like I have a lot more maneuverability, a lot more room to move when I tune from that perspective, because I feel like I have, I don't know, for me at least, I have a bit more of an indication of the dynamic range or the frequency range. You're like, tune it up or tune it down. I'm going to be able to hear that pretty well, because it's going to have a constant, which is on the bottom, and it's going to remain pretty consistent there. So I think for me, when it comes to, I guess, heads like the remote pinstripe, something like that, on the bottom, on the resonant head, it'll be a lot more on the tighter side. So by the time that I tune the batter head, I can significantly hear the difference in it going up or down. So I generally start there with the resonant head. On the batter head, I guess a lot of us at church, we tend to aim for a little bit of tone, but we also aim for something that's going to have quite a short sustain. That's definitely going to help our front of house guys out a lot. Everybody that's on a console, I think, in the audio section. So I think we tend to aim a lot more for tones that don't have a really long sustain. And of course, we do like our beefy sizes as well. So sometimes I think this is a 12, this could be a 13, and then this could be an 18 sometimes, or 13, 16, whatever's preferred. It could be 13, 16, 18. But yeah, I think we generally go for, I guess because of the style that we play and the genre that we play, I think those kinds of tones generally allow us to sort of kind of suit the context a little bit better if we're aiming for something that's kind of a bit lower, a bit punchier, shorter sustain. So we want to aim for that sort of thing. I know we could get into all the science about, the airflow in the actual drum and all that sort of thing, but I think I feel like you could talk for days on that sort of stuff. And some of it comes down to preference as well. I know growing up for me, listening to Dave Weckl a lot of my toms, a lot of my drums would have actually quite a long sustain. It's just because I really appreciated the tone and the kind of attack that he got. But that's obviously been adapted for the context that I play in now. So yeah, things have changed over time, but I think for whatever context we're in, I think you have to be mindful of that. So in particular, I think this is kind of where I'm at now. I think this is kind of the best of both worlds for me. I generally try and find the balance, especially when I'm playing in church.
Yeah, perfect.
So, I mean, you probably have some thoughts on as well, because I'm sure you have some kind of perspective on tuning your kit as well.
Well, it's not going to necessarily be different to anything I think that you've just said there. You've mentioned that personal preference is definitely going to play a part in that. So what we do at our church, or maybe what our preferences might be, it's likely that might be different to yours, and that's okay. I think there are a couple of standards though that we're going to meet. So for example, that would be if you're trying to get a deep sound out of a floor tom, don't use a 13-inch tom and tune it all the way down. Because I think we maybe find that sometimes, or we might use a 14-inch as a floor tom. And if it's a really good one, you actually might be able to get a good floor tom sound out of it. You're probably better off though getting a 16 or an 18, finding the appropriate size. Same with a rack tom. If you want it to sound nice and high, don't get a 14-inch rack tom. And if you want it to have a nice medium sound tone, well, don't get a super low tom and tune it up. Get the right appropriate size. Yep. I think the only other thing that's worth mentioning as well is with muffling or with gaff tape. I know a lot of the times our drummers, hopefully not our drummers, especially maybe newer drummers that aren't so familiar with how to tune, instead of trying to get the right tone out of the drum, we'll just put a bunch of gaff tape and a bunch of muffling on it until it sounds pretty dead. And it's like, well, I can't hear any overtones, so maybe that'll do for now, as opposed to actually learning how to tune. And I would say take the time. There are so many videos and resources on different methods that you can take for tuning to get a good sound out of your drums.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well as that, like your head choice is going to have an influence. I know this head that I'm using right now on the kit right now is it's an Evans HD Dry. It has like tone control rings on the outside of it. On the underside of it, it's got a tone control ring, but then it has these holes in it, which actually kind of eliminate some of those overtones. So it is literally quite dry.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of our drummers use that as well. There you go. And as well as that, I've got maybe some moon gels as like the tuning, because it's actually quite an old head now, so the tuning might go out after a while. And I think it just provides a little bit more control if I put the moon gels on it and all that sort of thing. So yeah, don't go too crazy on the gaff.
Yeah.
if you don't have to.
Maybe before we finish, Harry, did you want to touch on this idea of the head sound versus the microphone sound and how that's going to be different?
Yeah, how it sounds on an acoustic level, just through your human ears, is going to be different to how it translates through the microphones. You could definitely have to keep that in mind. The position of the mics is going to have an influence over the way your kit is translated. There's going to be so many factors, so I think it just comes down to a conversation. You feel like you could feel like you would have everything tuned to the way you want it. You feel like you could have everything tuned to perfection in your ears, and it sounds great, and it sounds great even from a distance. But you might end up having a conversation with the front of house guy or the monitors engineer and say, this is not sounding the way I thought it would. And he's like, yeah, can we just get some of those overtones out? And to you, it's like, what overtones? I didn't hear anything. But that's why I'm saying it requires a conversation, because things change, and the microphone can pick up something that perhaps that your ear is not. Obviously, the proximity of the microphone to your drum has got to be much different to the proximity of your ears to the drum. So I think that's something to keep in mind, and just find the balance, I think, in that realm. It's really important. So I think you're going to help everybody out if at least you can find some kind of common ground between helping them achieve the best sound that they can and give them some freedom within that, but also have something that you're happy with acoustically as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And the same goes for cymbals as well. You're going to find that a cymbal might sound great in your ear, but to your ear, but your physical ear, but it'll sound different when a microphone's picked that up. And we'll certainly explore that as well in our last session when we talk about some decisions when it comes to our cymbals and gear.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Some of the ways that we approach tuning our drums. We're probably going to end that session there, and we're excited to see you for our next session, where we're going to explore what it means for us to spiritually prepare ourselves for a worship music context. So we'll see you then.